It's a big day in the tropics. It's the first day of fall, and Hurricane Gabrielle just rapidly intensified into a Category 4 major hurricane east of Bermuda. But that's not all. We've got two more systems to watch, and one of them could impact the east coast of the US next week. I'm about to break down what's happening in the tropics so you know what to expect going forward. But first, please feel free to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here for more tropical weather updates. So here's what's happening in the tropics right now. We have Hurricane Gabrielle. In the latest advisory, maximum sustained winds are 140 miles an hour, making it a Category 4 major hurricane, and it's rapidly intensified from only a Category 1 yesterday. Maximum wind gusts are up to 165 miles an hour. It's moving north-northeast at 12 miles per hour. Minimum pressure is down to 948 millibars. That's the current intensity. And then tonight, it's expected to stay at around 140 miles an hour. I think some continued intensification is actually possible. That's what I think. Through tonight, before it looks like it's more likely to level off and start to weaken down as we go into tomorrow, looking at a Category 3 hurricane. By the time we get into Wednesday, it's expected to be a Category 2 before weakening down to a Category 1 and kind of heading towards Europe. In the next 5 days, we can see it still as a tropical storm with winds of 50 miles an hour headed towards Western Europe. So that's going to be interesting. Right now, it is just east of Bermuda. It's expected to continue moving off to the north and east. It's pretty much a fish storm for the most part, except I guess it will also hit the Azores. But pretty much a fish storm, but the second major hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. And it's not just Gabrielle. We have two other disturbances. This one has a 30% chance of formation in the next 48 hours and an 80% chance over the next 7 days. So a pretty significant storm system there. That's this tropical wave right here. And then we have this one out in front of it. That's moving into this other area to watch. And that one has a 10% chance in the next 2 days, but over the next 7 days, a 50% chance of formation. And if you notice, this is headed towards the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Bahamas, and it could end up making its way towards the east coast of the U.S., potentially the southeast or the east coast. Should be watching for a potential tropical storm system out of that. So the tropics are heating up, interestingly enough, after some inactivity for a while. Now we are seeing more things happening. Now, also here's Gabrielle. The intensity guidance does potentially intensify it a little bit more through tonight before then after about 24 hours or so, it looks like the intensity will come back down, and then it'll stay a major hurricane for the next couple days or so before then it starts to weaken down pretty quickly, dropping below hurricane intensity for the next few days. The HAFS-A model does max out the intensity at around 145 miles an hour before bringing it down as a Category 3, still staying a major hurricane for a while before it starts weakening down really quickly and turns more into an extratropical storm system as we go towards the weekend. Now, here's a look at the ensembles, because we have Gabrielle, but the storm systems after it, and especially the one further to the west, could actually impact the Bahamas and the U.S. So here's the GEFS ensemble models, and we have these two areas to watch. This is that one that's further west. It actually looks more organized than the one further east on this run, and we could see a tropical depression or even a tropical storm out of this one as it moves just east of the Bahamas and potentially comes towards the east coast. We have this pretty big area of high pressure that's expected to be steering the storm systems pretty much in this direction, and then that could allow it to get very close to the east coast or potentially even create a direct impact, but we'll have to see what happens with that. And this is in the next week or so. So a few days for this to change, because we don't even have an organized tropical storm system yet. We'll have to wait a couple days for that. But we could see something try to impact the east coast of the U.S., And then the second storm system doesn't look as intense, interestingly enough, even though it has a higher chance of formation from the National Hurricane Center. This run of the GEFS model doesn't really intensify it as much as the one that's further west. And then we'll have to see what happens after that as we go into early October, where things could actually remain pretty active. Now, the Euro ensembles are showing that the disturbance further east with the high chance of formation, they're intensifying it more significantly into a tropical storm within the next 4 to 5 days. We could see a tropical system out of it. The one further west stays weaker, but it could even start hitting the Carolinas or the southeastern U.S. Perhaps it just depends on the steering patterns, and also there's all these fronts moving off the eastern U.S., and so depending on where those are at the time could really impact whether this hits the East Coast or not, and also if the storm system is able to strengthen as well. Here's a look at the GFS model. So those were the ensembles. Now we have the GFS model from Tropical Tidbits. We have Gabrielle moves off to the east over the next few days, hits the Azores around Thursday night, going to Friday, and then ends up moving towards Europe, eventually reaching there by this weekend into early next week. By September 29th, we have an area of low pressure actually hitting Spain and Portugal and even France. Then we have the tropical disturbances we're watching. The GFS model actually doesn't really show like two areas separate. They're kind of pretty close together, and the GFS is showing most of the energy is with the further west storm system. The one further east doesn't really do anything, but we have a tropical depression possibly, or maybe a weak tropical storm tries to do something. But then going into like September 30th, October 1st, we could see a short-lived tropical storm trying to develop, but then notice what happens. We have a big front that comes down and really wipes out the tropical system and turns it more into a non-tropical area of low pressure, and keeps it out in the southwestern Atlantic and prevents it from impacting the U.S. And then we see some more activity, but still out in the middle of the Atlantic. But the previous run of the GFS was showing some stronger tropical activity, and they were showing a tropical storm system hitting North Carolina before also moving east from the fronts. But it just depends if it's able to continue moving north and west before the front hits it, then it's going to be able to cause impacts, versus if the front comes down a lot more quickly, it's going to prevent anything from really happening. And then we had some more tropical systems going on from really starting around October 3rd, going all the way into October 8th, with a major hurricane in the Gulf. Now that's, that's possible given the extremely warm sea surface temperatures, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But other than that, the newest run of the GFS model is not showing too much. Now let's take a look at the moisture and the wind shear. The wind shear is not that bad, so we could try to see a tropical system. If it manages to avoid all these fronts, then we can definitely see a tropical system. And there's also definitely a lot of moisture there. Plus the warm sea surface temperatures should not be a problem for additional development over the next several days. But what that exactly looks like, we'll have to see. Now, here's a look at the Euro model showing Gabrielle doing the same thing. Then they're showing the storm system with the high chance of formation, the one further east, is the storm with the greater development potential. So they're showing by around Thursday night a tropical system starting to form. Then it rapidly intensifies into a pretty powerful major hurricane, but it does also develop the storm system further west, but it's going to be weaker. And they're showing a potential weak tropical depression or tropical storm tries to hit North Carolina, just like the previous version of the GFS, even though on the GFS it was stronger. In the previous run, the 12Z run, which is actually the same as the Euro, the current run is the 12Z run. So there was some consistency with that, but the Euro model is showing a much more powerful hurricane from our further east disturbance. They're not labeled as invest yet or anything like that, so we can't really go off of that. But the shear is actually not bad either. On the Euro model, like 10 knots, the moisture isn't really there at first for our eastward disturbance. The wind shear actually increases even though it's able to rapidly intensify even despite that. That's a little bit different, but still moderate wind shear and not so much moisture with it. Now our tropical depression off the east coast of the US, there's actually more shear, so this could prevent development or maybe even create a less tropical system, maybe more of a frontal system. We'll have to see if at this point it's able to develop. There's still moderate to high wind shear in this area, so that's going to be a thing that could prevent some development. So we'll have to see what happens. We could see the storm to the east is a lot stronger with very favorable outflow. The one further west, it could, depending on where the area of low pressure sets up, it could be in a favorable environment with pretty intense outflow. But then we also have this trough right here, which could create some shear, and these strong winds could make it less of a tropical system and more of a subtropical or even a non-tropical storm system. But even with that, some gusty winds and rain impacts will be possible for portions of the East Coast, especially around North Carolina, if this scenario holds true. Now, one thing that remains extremely favorable for tropical development is the extremely high sea surface temperatures and upper ocean heat potential for our tropical systems. We have, because of the inactivity, because these waters have been untapped by a lot of tropical activity, things are extremely warm out there, and we're seeing upper ocean heat potential over 200. I don't think I've seen this type of map showing this extreme upper ocean heat content. Yeah, like especially for the Caribbean, which tends to get a lot of that upper ocean heat content, but like this is pretty extreme that we're seeing that. The Gulf actually is starting to cool off a little bit. The northern part of the Gulf, it is very warm though, but not as extreme as we're seeing sea surface temperatures approaching 90 degrees in parts of the Caribbean, and that's a problem, especially as we start going towards October. We start seeing some more storm systems in this kind of region. That's going to be a problem with sea surface temperatures like this. That would allow for some rapid intensification, like Hurricane Milton last year, that was in the Gulf, that was able to rapidly intensify. We're seeing with Hurricane Gabrielle, which is like right here, not in some of those extreme upper ocean heat content areas. We're seeing it being a category 4, so it depends on other factors as well. But this is actually concerning. And if we just look at the sea surface temperatures themselves, really all you need is 26 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees to maintain a hurricane, and that's pretty much all the Atlantic, extending way up, into the northern part of the Atlantic too. But these extremely warm sea surface temperatures across the southern Gulf and most of the Caribbean are tropical systems over the next several days. Those are actually going to the north of this area, but still in a very, very warm environment, like mid 80s in terms of the sea surface temperatures. It's extremely favorable for development. Now, the wind shear and the moisture has to line up too, which there hasn't been a whole lot of favorable conditions in that regard this hurricane season, but looks like things are starting to get more favorable with that. And we also have some activity going on in the eastern Pacific. Let's head over there where we have Tropical Storm Narda. Right now, maximum sustained winds are actually up to 60 miles an hour, wind gusts at 70 miles an hour. It's moving away from the coast of Mexico, but we still see showers and thunderstorms along the coast there. And then winds could increase to 70 miles an hour tonight, and it is expected to become a hurricane. So we're looking at Hurricane Narda tomorrow, and then could even become a category 2, maybe even a major hurricane. If these winds are at 110 miles an hour, there's nothing to say that we can't see a potentially even further strengthening up to a major hurricane. But, we're having activity not just in the Atlantic, but it also still the Eastern Pacific still going, which has actually been somewhat more active than previously forecasted. Here's a quick run through of the GFS model. Here's Narda. It goes west, but then it could actually make a turn, and the moisture does not reach California or the Southwest, unlike Mario. So that's interesting. And then we have potential weak development. We'll have to see what happens here with potentially one or two other areas that try to do something. We'll have to see if that's able to do anything. But also, things are more favorable over the Atlantic, the MJO. Here's the GFS model showing it's actually unfavorable technically, but once we get something going, it's not hard to keep it going, even if the MJO is not super favorable. But it is showing that it starts becoming more favorable over the central part of the Atlantic, going to the very end of September and the beginning of October. And the previous run had a little bit more information showing even going into October 6th. We're still looking at that favorable conditions over the Atlantic, but the Eastern Pacific is actually unfavorable, so that's why we're not seeing a whole bunch of hurricanes over there, but we're still able to see some storms getting named and becoming hurricanes over there. Now, as we go towards mid-October, the MJO looks like it'll be even more favorable over the Eastern Pacific and the Western Atlantic, kind of that Central America region, which it seems like it's been kind of hung up there somewhat frequently this hurricane season. But even though we haven't seen a whole lot in the western part of the Atlantic, it's mostly been the East Pacific. So that's something interesting. But going into October 7th, October 12th, even all the way into October 22nd, maybe late October, still looking at favorable over there before it starts getting unfavorable again, it looks like, as we go into the beginning of November, which by then the hurricane season probably starts winding down a little bit. But we can still see a couple things at the last minute. But all the activity and what the MJO is doing, all that, it does actually line up, not just with the climatologically favored regions for tropical development in October, but also the long-range forecast model, the NMME model, is showing activity kind of around Central America, also the Gulf, potentially the southeastern U.S., and parts of the southwestern Atlantic. In October, this is showing above average precipitation, not exactly tropical systems, but it's showing that moisture, that potential for tropical activity is going to be, for the most part, within this region. So that's what's going on in the tropics. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit that like button if you haven't already, share the video, and make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more weather updates on the tropics. Thanks for watching. Extreme Weather Zone, out.